The rain didn't wash away the ink on the papers. It only made the signature of Bruce Sullivan look more permanent, more lethal. Clarity Dunst stood on the curb of Fifth Avenue, the hem of her silk birthday dress, the one she'd saved months to buy, soaking up the oily gutter water. In her right hand she clutched the sonogram of the 12-week-old life fluttering inside her. In her left, the legal dissolution of her soul. "Sign them, Clarity. Don't make this a scene," Bruce had whispered moments ago, sliding the documents across the candlelit table of the most expensive restaurant in the city. He hadn't even looked at the cake the waiter was bringing out. He hadn't looked at her blooming stomach. He had simply checked his watch, stood up and walked out into the velvet night, leaving her with a bill she couldn't pay and a life she no longer recognized. How does a man go from whispering "forever" in your ear to handing you a legal eviction from his heart on the very day you were born? Before we dive deeper into this journey of betrayal and the silver lining that waits in the shadows, hello to every single one of you joining us today. I am so grateful to have you here in this space where stories come alive. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing how far our community reaches. If you're feeling the weight of Clarity's heartbeat right now, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and join our family. Your support is the fuel that allows me to bring these emotional journeys to life, and we have a long, transformative road ahead of us today. Are you doing okay? I hope this story reminds you that even when the world goes dark, someone is holding a light just out of view. Clarity's knees buckled. The sophisticated facade of the Upper East Side blurred into a smear of neon lights and judging eyes. She collapsed against a cold marble pillar of the Pierre Hotel, her sobs finally breaking through the shock. They were ugly, guttural sounds, the sound of a woman being dismantled. She was homeless. She was broke. She was pregnant. And it was 11:45 p.m. on her 30th birthday. The world seemed to move in fast forward around her. Yellow cabs streaking by, couples laughing under umbrellas, while she remained frozen in a vacuum of agony. She felt the heavy vibration of a high-end engine idling nearby, but she didn't look up. She couldn't. Her fingers were cramped around the sonogram, protecting the only thing she had left. "It's okay to let it out," a voice vibrated through the rain. It wasn't a soft voice. It was deep, resonant, and carried the weight of someone used to commanding rooms, yet it held a sudden, sharp edge of empathy. Clarity didn't look up until a pair of hand-stitched Italian leather shoes entered her field of vision. Then a coat, warm, smelling of sandalwood and expensive rain, was draped over her shivering shoulders. Before she could pull away or apologize for the mess she was, a pair of strong arms reached out. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't ask who she was. He simply pulled her into a chest that felt like a fortress. For the first time in years, Clarity felt a different kind of vibration, not the trembling of her own fear, but the steady, rhythmic heartbeat of a man who looked at a broken woman and saw something worth shielding. Who was this stranger stopping his world for a girl sobbing in the dirt? And why did his embrace feel more like home than the husband she had known for a decade? The man holding her was Logan Roy Stark. In the world of global acquisitions and steel-edged negotiations, his name was synonymous with a cold, calculated brilliance. He was a man who saw the world in balance sheets and tactical advantages. But as he held Clarity in the downpour, the liquid heat of her tears soaking through his custom-tailored shirt, the billionaire felt a crack in the icy armor he had spent 15 years perfecting. Logan wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be at a gala 3 blocks away, shaking hands with senators. But a sudden, inexplicable restlessness had clawed at him, prompting him to tell his driver to pull over. Then he saw her, a woman in a ruined silk dress, slumped against the marble like a fallen angel discarded by the city. "I've got you," Logan murmured, his voice a low rumble against the crown of her head. He didn't care that the paparazzi might be lurking. He didn't care that his $5,000 suit was being ruined by the grime of the sidewalk. Clarity finally pulled back, her breath hitching in her chest. Her face was a roadmap of exhaustion and heartbreak. I'm sorry," she stammered, trying to wipe her eyes with shaking hands. "I'm making a scene. I'll go. I don't have anywhere to go." The honesty of that statement hit Logan like a physical blow. He looked down and saw the legal papers crumpled in the rain, petition for dissolution of marriage. And then he saw the sonogram. The tiny, curled shape of a life that had no idea its world had just ended. "You're not going anywhere," Logan said, his tone shifting from comfort to an absolute, unshakable authority. He signaled to his driver, who appeared instantly with a massive black umbrella. "You're coming with me." To understand how Clarity ended up on that curb, one had to understand the quiet, self-sacrificing soul she possessed. Clarity had been a rising star in interior design before she met Bruce. She was a woman who saw the beauty in the mundane, who could turn a cold room into a sanctuary with a single choice of fabric. But Bruce had slowly, methodically dimmed her light. He preferred her as an ornament, a quiet, supportive wife who stayed in the shadows of his mid-level real estate career. She had given him everything. Her savings, her career, her late mother's inheritance to help him flip his first apartment building. She had stayed up nights doing his bookkeeping while he took the credit. And when she found out she was pregnant, she thought it was the final piece of their puzzle. She thought Bruce's distance over the last year was just stress. She didn't realize he was waiting for her birthday, the day he knew she'd be most vulnerable, to discard her for a younger, wealthier heiress he'd been seeing behind her back. Clarity's deepest fear had always been invisibility. She grew up as a foster child, moving from one temporary home to another, always the girl in the background. Bruce had promised her a permanent home. He had promised her she would never be invisible again. And tonight he had proven that to him she was less than a ghost. As the heavy door of Logan's Maybach closed, sealing out the noise of the city, Clarity felt the plush leather against her skin. She looked at the man sitting across from her. Logan was staring out the window, his jaw tight. He was a man of immense power, yet there was a loneliness in his eyes that mirrored her own. "Why did you stop?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. Logan turned his gaze toward her. His eyes were the color of the Atlantic before a storm. "Because I know what it's like to be surrounded by millions of people and realize not one of them is looking at you." He reached out, his hand hovering near hers for a moment before he pulled back, as if afraid his intensity might break what little was left of her. "My name is Logan," he said simply. "Clarity," she replied, a small, fragile spark of dignity returning to her voice. "Well, Clarity," Logan said, his eyes dropping to the divorce papers she still held. "Tomorrow the world is going to look very different for Bruce Sullivan. But tonight you're going to sleep, you're going to eat, and you're going to realize that your life didn't end on that curb. It just finally started." As they drove toward his private estate in Greenwich, Clarity felt a strange sensation. For the first time in 10 years she wasn't thinking about how to make Bruce happy. She was thinking about the man sitting across from her. A man who lived in a world of sharks, yet chose to be a lighthouse for a stranger. But as the gates of the Roystark estate swung open, Clarity didn't know that Logan had secrets of his own. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a man running from a past that looked a lot like hers. A past involving a betrayal that had left him unable to trust anyone. Until tonight. The morning sun didn't rise, it glared. It spilled across the Egyptian cotton sheets of the guest suite in Logan's mansion, mocking Clarity with its brightness. For a few seconds the warmth of the room, the scent of fresh lilies on the nightstand and the soft hum of central heating, fooled her into thinking the previous night was a fever dream. Then she shifted, and the sharp rustle of the divorce papers on the bedside table brought the ceiling crashing down. She was pregnant. She was alone. And she was in the home of a man who could buy and sell her hometown. A soft knock at the door preceded a woman in a crisp gray uniform. "Good morning, Miss Dunst. Mr. Roystark is expecting you for breakfast on the terrace. He's already had your things from your apartment moved into the dressing room." Clarity's heart lurched. "My things? How? I didn't give him a key." The maid offered a small, knowing smile. "Mr. Roystark doesn't usually need keys, miss. He has a way of opening doors." Panic flared in Clarity's chest. Was she a guest or a captive? She dressed quickly in a simple cream sweater and leggings that had been unpacked, clothes Bruce had always called frumpy, and made her way to the terrace. Logan was there, silhouetted against the morning mist rising off the Long Island Sound. He was on the phone, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "I don't care if his firm is mid-sized. I want every line of credit Bruce Sullivan has ever looked at frozen by noon. If he breathes, I want to know the oxygen content." He clicked the phone shut and turned. The moment his eyes met Clarity's, the predatory sharpness vanished, replaced by a guarded warmth. "You look better. Did you sleep?" "Logan, you can't do this," Clarity said, her voice trembling as she stepped onto the stone patio. You can't just raid my apartment and threaten my husband. Ex-husband, Logan corrected, pulling out a chair for her. And I didn't raid it. I sent a professional team to retrieve your life before he could throw it into a dumpster. Which, according to my security, he was planning to do this morning to make room for a friend moving in. The air left Clarity's lungs. Bruce was already replacing her? On the day after her birthday? The betrayal felt like a fresh blade. She sank into the chair, the weight of the sonogram in her pocket feeling like lead. I have no money, Logan, she whispered, looking at the lavish spread of fruit, pastries, and protein she knew her body needed for the baby. I have no job. I can't pay you back for whatever this is. I don't want your money, Clarity, Logan said, leaning forward. His presence was overwhelming, a mix of safety and unspoken intensity. I want a favor. And it's one that will give you everything you need to keep that child safe. Before he could explain, a shadow fell over the table. A tall, impeccably dressed woman with hair like spun glass stepped out. This was Vesper Lynn Monroe, Logan's chief of staff and the only person who dared to challenge him. Logan, the board is panicking, Vesper said, her eyes raking over Clarity with a mixture of curiosity and professional coldness. The rumors of you picking up a mystery woman in the rain are already hitting the tabloids. They're saying you've lost your edge, that you're being impulsive. Logan didn't even look at Vesper. His eyes stayed locked on Clarity. The board wants me to show stability. They want a family man. They think I'm too volatile because I'm alone. He paused, the silence stretching tight enough to snap. I need a wife, Clarity. For 1 year. A legal, binding arrangement to secure my position as chairman. In exchange, I will give you the best medical care in the world, a home for your child, and a legal team that will leave Bruce Sullivan with nothing but the shirt on his back. Clarity gasped. A fake marriage? Logan, I'm pregnant with another man's baby. Exactly, Logan said, a dark, triumphant glint in his eyes. The world will think it's mine. It protects you, it protects the child, and it gives me the image I need. It's a business transaction, Clarity. No emotions. Just a contract. The first major twist had landed. Clarity looked at this man, this beautiful, terrifying stranger, and realized she was standing at a crossroads. Behind her was a life of poverty and the cruelty of a man who hated her. In front of her was a lion offering his mane as a shield. Before we see if Clarity signs her soul over to another powerful man, I have to ask, what would you do? If you were at your lowest point and a billionaire offered you a way out with a no-strings marriage, would you take the leap? Tell me in the comments. I'm dying to know your thoughts on this. And if you're enjoying the tension, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the moment Bruce finds out he's been outplayed. Clarity looked down at her hands. They were still shaking. You said no emotions. Can you promise that? Logan's gaze flickered, a momentary lapse in his steel-trap composure. In my world, Clarity, emotions are a liability. You're safe from them here. But as he reached across the table to hand her a pen, his fingers brushed hers. A jolt of pure, electric heat snapped between them, so strong that Clarity gasped and Logan pulled back as if burned. The lie was already written in the air. This was going to be anything but business. I'll do it, Clarity whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. For the baby. For the baby, Logan echoed, though his eyes lingered on her lips a second too long. The trap was set. The deal was signed. But as Vesper watched them from the doorway, her eyes narrowed. She knew Logan better than anyone, and she knew that for the first time in his life he wasn't looking at a contract. He was looking at a woman he wanted to own, not for the board but for himself. The transformation of Clarity Dunst into the future Mrs. Roystark was not merely a change of clothes. It was a psychological war. Within 72 hours, Logan had replaced her entire wardrobe with silks and wools that cost more than her former home. But while the exterior was being polished, the interior of the Roystark mansion was becoming a pressure cooker of unspoken desires and mounting threats. Logan was a man of routines, but Clarity was a disruption he hadn't calculated for. He found himself leaving the office earlier, his mind wandering during high-stakes board meetings to the way Clarity looked when she thought no one was watching. Usually standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the nursery he was having built, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. You're doing it again, Vesper Lynn Monroe remarked one afternoon, dropping a file on Logan's mahogany desk. "You're staring at the security feed of the East Wing. This was a business arrangement, Logan. Remember? The family man play to appease the shareholders." "I'm ensuring my investment is secure, Vesper," Logan snapped, though his thumb traced the screen where Clarity was currently reading a book. "Bruce Sullivan has been sniffing around. He's realized Clarity didn't just disappear into a shelter. He knows she's with me. And he's furious," Vesper added, her voice dropping. "He's been telling anyone who will listen that Clarity stole proprietary information from his real estate firm before she left. He's trying to build a case for theft to discredit her before the wedding announcement." Logan's eyes turned to ice. "Let him try. He'll find himself in a courtroom where the judge is on my payroll." While Logan fought the external war, Clarity was fighting an internal one. The more time she spent with Logan, the more she realized that his cold exterior was a carefully constructed mask. One evening, during a quiet dinner where the silence felt heavy with electricity, she caught him staring at her with a look of such profound longing that she almost dropped her glass. "Why are you really doing this, Logan?" she asked softly. "You could have hired any actress to play this part. Why a pregnant, broken woman you found in the rain?" Logan set his fork down, his gaze intensifying. "Because you weren't acting, Clarity. In a city where everyone is wearing a mask to get something from me, your pain was the only honest thing I'd seen in years. I didn't want a partner who was playing a role. I wanted someone who knew what it felt like to lose everything, because then you're the only one who can appreciate what it means to build something real." He stood up and walked around the table, stopping just inches from her. The scent of his cologne, a mix of cedar and rain, swirled around her. He reached out, his hand hovering over her abdomen. How is he?" "She," Clarity whispered, her heart racing. "I think it's a girl." Logan's hand finally made contact, his palm flat against the soft curve of her belly. For a moment time stopped. The billionaire, the man who moved markets with a nod, looked completely undone by the simple flutter of a life that wasn't even his. "She's lucky," Logan murmured, his voice thick. "She has a mother who stayed when the world walked out." The intimacy of the moment was shattered by the sharp ringing of Clarity's phone. It was an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "You think you've won, don't you?" Bruce's voice hissed through the line, sounding jagged and drunk. "You found a bigger fish to hide behind. But I know your secrets, Clarity. I know about the inheritance your mother left that you didn't disclose in our initial filings. You think Logan Stark wants a liar? When he finds out you've been hiding money from the court, he'll toss you back to the curb where he found you." Clarity went pale, her hand dropping from Logan's arm. "Bruce, I don't know what you're talking about. That money was gone years ago. You spent it." "Prove it," Bruce laughed. "See you at the gala tomorrow night, princess. I can't wait to tell your new owner what kind of girl he's actually bought." He hung up. Clarity felt the walls closing in. Bruce wasn't just going away. He was planning to humiliate her on the world stage, and he was using a lie about her past to do it. "We're at a breaking point, everyone. Bruce is spiraling and looking to take Clarity down with him. Do you think Logan will believe her, or will his trust issues tear them apart before the first I do? If you're rooting for Clarity to stand her ground, hit that like button right now. And make sure you're subscribed. The midpoint revelation is coming up, and it's going to change everything you think you know about Logan's past." "What did he say?" Logan demanded, his eyes searching her face. He's coming to the gala," Clarity said, her voice trembling. "He's going to tell everyone I'm a thief. Logan, I never stole anything. I gave him everything I had." Logan took her by the shoulders, his grip firm and grounding. "Look at me. Do you think I haven't already audited your entire life? I know Bruce spent your mother's money. I know he's been laundering funds through his firm. He thinks he's playing chess, but he's playing with a grandmaster. But the board, if there's a scandal, then let there be a scandal," Logan growled, his face inches from hers. "I've spent my life protecting my reputation. I'd rather spend the rest of it protecting you." In that moment, the fake part of their arrangement felt like a distant memory. The tension between them snapped, and Logan leaned in, his lips brushing against her forehead in a gesture that was more intimate than a kiss. It was a vow. But as they prepared for the gala, the event meant to announce their union, a mysterious envelope arrived for Logan, marked private and confidential. Inside was a photograph from 15 years ago. A photograph of a young Logan, a woman who looked strikingly like Clarity, and a man whose face had been aggressively scratched out with a red pen. The red herrings were moving into place. Was Clarity just a pawn in a much older game Logan was playing? Or was she the key to a past he had tried to bury? The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of shimmering silk and sharp tuxedos, but for Clarity, it felt like a gilded cage. Every flash of a paparazzi camera felt like a physical blow. She moved through the crowd on Logan's arm, her baby bump elegantly draped in midnight blue velvet. Logan was a pillar of ice and power at her side, his hand never leaving the small of her back. Then the air turned cold. Bruce Sullivan appeared like a ghost at a feast. He looked disheveled despite his expensive suit, his eyes bloodshot and fixed on Clarity with a terrifying intensity. He didn't wait for an introduction. He marched straight toward them, a man with nothing left to lose. Enjoying the high life, Clarity? Bruce sneered, loud enough for the nearby socialites to gasp. Does your billionaire know he's marrying a woman who already has a price on her head? Or did you forget to tell him about the missing $2 million from my firm's escrow account? Logan stepped forward, his silhouette dwarfing Bruce's. You're making a mistake, Sullivan. Walk away while you still have a career. I don't think so, Logan, Bruce laughed, pulling a crumpled document from his pocket. I did some digging into your charity case. Clarity isn't just a foster kid. She's the daughter of Evelyn Dunst. Does that name ring a bell, Logan? Or should I say, does it ring a bell for your father? The color drained from Logan's face, a sight Clarity had never seen. The invincible billionaire flinched. What is he talking about? Clarity whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. Tell her, Logan. Bruce shouted, drawing a crowd. Tell her that your father was the one who liquidated her mother's estate 30 years ago. Your family didn't just find her in the rain. Your family is the reason she was in the rain to begin with. This isn't a romance, it's a guilt trip. The world tilted. Clarity looked at Logan, begging him to deny it, to say Bruce was lying. But Logan's eyes were filled with a raw, agonizing guilt that confirmed every word. Clarity, I didn't know. Not until last night. Logan reached for her, his voice breaking. I found the files in the confidential envelope. My father. He ruined your mother's business. He's the reason you ended up in the foster system. The revelation was a tectonic shift. The man who had saved her was the son of the man who had destroyed her. Every touch, every kind word, every promise of a future now felt tainted by the blood of her past. Bruce smirked, satisfied with the carnage he'd caused. You used me, Clarity breathed, the tears finally spilling over. This marriage, it wasn't about stability. It was about penance. You didn't see me on that curb, Logan. You saw a debt you had to pay. No, Clarity, listen to me. Logan started, but the board members were already closing in, whispering, and the flashbulbs were blinding. In that moment of shared vulnerability and ultimate betrayal, the connection they had built over the last few weeks shattered into a million jagged pieces. Clarity realized she wasn't a wife or even a partner. She was a project. A way for a billionaire to sleep better at night. We've reached the eye of the storm. The man who saved her is the son of the man who broke her. Is there any coming back from a lie that deep? Could you ever trust someone again if you found out your entire life's suffering was caused by their family? I want to see your Team Logan or Team Clarity votes in the comments right now. This is getting intense. Make sure you're subscribed because we're heading into the darkest hour next. Stay away from me, Clarity said, her voice cold and hollow. She didn't look back as she pushed through the crowd, fleeing the ballroom and the man who had stolen her heart only to reveal it was already his by right of conquest. As she burst out into the night, the rain began to fall again. But this time there was no one to catch her. And in the shadows across the street, a black sedan waited. Not Logan's, but a car belonging to the people Bruce had truly sold her out to. The stakes weren't just about a marriage anymore. They were about survival. The cold bite of the rain was nothing compared to the frost hardening in Clarity's chest. She ran, her heels clicking rhythmically against the slick pavement, each step a desperate attempt to outrun the truth. Logan wasn't her savior. He was her inheritance's executioner. The velvet dress felt like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. She didn't hear the black sedan pull up. She didn't see the door swing open until it was too late. Going somewhere, Clarity? It wasn't Bruce. It was a man she didn't recognize. sharp-featured, wearing a cheap suit and a predatory grin. Before she could scream, a heavy hand clamped over her mouth, and she was hauled into the back of the car. The scent of stale tobacco and old leather filled her senses as the door slammed shut, locking with a finality that sounded like a tomb. Inside the plaza, Logan was a man possessed. He had shoved Bruce into a wall, his hand around the man's throat before Vesper and security pulled him off. "Where is she?" Logan roared, his eyes wild. "She's gone, Logan," Vesper shouted, gripping his arm. "And you have bigger problems. The board is calling an emergency session. Bruce didn't just leak the story about your father. He leaked the fake marriage contract. They're claiming fraud. They're moving to strip you of your chairmanship tonight." "I don't care about the chair," Logan screamed, shaking her off. "She's pregnant, Vesper. She's alone, she has no money, and Bruce has people following her. If anything happens to her or that baby, I will burn this city to the ground." But as Logan raced to the curb, all he found was Clarity's broken phone, lying in a puddle. She was gone. Truly gone. For the first time in his life, the billionaire felt the crushing weight of powerlessness. He had billions of dollars, a private army of security, and the fastest cars in the world, yet he couldn't find the one person who gave his life meaning. Clarity was thrown into a dim, dusty room in a warehouse near the shipping docks. Her hands were tied, but her spirit was far from broken. Across from her, Bruce sat on a crate, nursing a drink. He looked pathetic, a shell of the man who had once pretended to love her. "What do you want, Bruce?" she spat, her voice raw. "I want my life back," he yelled, throwing his glass against the wall. "Logan Stark froze my accounts. He blacklisted me from every firm in the tri-state area. I'm ruined, Clarity. And it's all because he wanted to play hero to my wife." "I am not your wife," she hissed. "I am the mother of a child you discarded. You did this to yourself." Bruce stepped toward her, his eyes dark with a desperate, flickering madness. "Maybe. But you're the only leverage I have left. I've made a deal with Logan's rivals. If I deliver you to them, along with the proof that the marriage was a lie, they'll give me enough to disappear to South America. And as for you," he leaned in, his breath hot on her face, "you'll be a guest of people who make Logan Stark look like a choir boy." Clarity felt a sharp pang in her abdomen, a protest from the life inside her. She closed her eyes, fear finally overtaking her anger. She was trapped in a game of titans and she was nothing but a pawn to be traded. Logan had lied about his family's past. Bruce had lied about his love. The world felt like a place where truth went to die. She slumped against the cold floor, the darkness of the warehouse closing in around her. She was at her breaking point, her body exhausted and her heart shattered. "Please," she whispered into the darkness, not to Bruce but to the universe. "Just save my baby. This is the moment where everything feels hopeless. Clarity is kidnapped, Logan is losing his empire, and the baby is in danger. Have you ever felt like the world was closing in on you from every side? How did you find the strength to keep going? Drop a comment below and let's support each other. And if you're holding your breath for Clarity, make sure you're subscribed. The turning point is next, and someone you least expect is about to step into the light." Back at the estate, Logan sat in his dark study, his head in his hands. He looked at the sonogram Clarity had left on his desk. He realized then that he didn't care about the debt his father owed her. He didn't care about the board or the billions. He loved her. Not as a project, not as penance, but as the woman who had looked at him and seen a man, not a bank account. He stood up, a new, cold clarity in his eyes. He reached for a hidden drawer in his desk and pulled out a burner phone. "Vesper," he said when she answered. "Forget the lawyers. Call the associates. I told you I'd never use again. We're not playing by the rules anymore." The warehouse was silent, save for the rhythmic drip of a leaking pipe and the distant hum of the harbor. Clarity lay on the cold concrete, her hands numb from the zip ties, but her mind was finally sharpening. The shock had worn off, replaced by a primal maternal ferocity. She looked at her stomach, still rounded, still a sanctuary, and felt a kick. A small, defiant thud against her ribs. "We are not dying here," she thought. "Not today." She began to scan the room, her eyes adjusting to the shadows. She wasn't just a victim. She was a woman who had survived the foster system and built a career from nothing. She spotted a discarded metal shim near a stack of rusted pallets. She could just reach it. Meanwhile, miles away, Logan's war room was in a state of controlled chaos. Vesper walked in, her face pale. Logan, we've tracked the sedan. It belongs to a shell company owned by Victor Sullivan, Bruce's uncle. They've taken her to the Pier 47 district. Logan didn't look up from a map of the docks. He was wearing a tactical jacket, his eyes devoid of the billionaire's polish. Tell the teams to move. I don't want a negotiation. I want her back. Logan, wait, Vesper said, placing a hand on his shoulder. If you do this, if you use these associates, the board will have the legal grounds to oust you permanently. You'll lose everything. The Roy Stark legacy will be gone. Logan finally looked up. For the first time he smiled, but there was no joy in it. Vesper, my father built this legacy on the bones of families like Clarity's. If losing it is the price for her life, then it's the cheapest deal I've ever made. Back in the warehouse, the door creaked open. Bruce walked in, looking even more unraveled. He held a phone to his ear, his voice high and thin. Yes, I have her. Just send the wire transfer and she's yours. He hung up and looked at Clarity. They're coming for you. Half an hour. I suggest you get comfortable. Bruce, Clarity said, her voice steady despite the dry state of her throat. Do you think they're going to let you walk away? You're a liability. You've kidnapped a woman who is technically still the wife of a man who owns the police, the docks, and the very air you're breathing. They aren't paying you to disappear. They're paying to make sure you're the fall guy. Bruce flinched, the seed of doubt planting itself in his eyes. Shut up. You don't know anything. I know that Logan Roy Stark doesn't lose, Clarity continued, her fingers finally brushing the metal shim. And I know that he loves this baby. Even if he doesn't love me, he will protect this child with everything he has. What do you think he'll do to the man who put it in a cold warehouse? As Bruce paced, agitated, Clarity worked the shim into the plastic of the zip tie. It sliced into her skin, but she didn't flinch. She felt the plastic give, a small pop that felt like a gunshot in her soul. She was free. Suddenly, the heavy iron doors of the warehouse shuddered. A low, rhythmic thumping began, the sound of heavy-duty vehicles approaching. A searchlight swept across the high windows, cutting through the darkness like a divine blade. He's here, Clarity whispered. She didn't wait for Bruce to react. She grabbed a heavy lead pipe from the floor and swung with every ounce of the betrayal, the birthday heartbreak, and the motherly rage she had stored up. It caught Bruce across the knees, sending him howling to the floor. She didn't look back. She ran toward the light. We are at the precipice of the final showdown. Clarity is fighting back, and Logan is sacrificing his entire empire to save her. Is there anything more powerful than a man willing to lose $1 billion for the woman he loves? If you're cheering for Logan's grand gesture, give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. We're moving into the climactic resolution, and I promise you, Bruce is about to get exactly what he deserves. The doors blew off their hinges with a controlled explosion. Smoke filled the air, and through the haze, Logan appeared. He wasn't the man in the $5,000 suit anymore. He was a man who had found his purpose. He saw Clarity running toward him, her blue dress torn and stained, and for a second the billionaire froze. The relief that washed over his face was so profound it looked like pain. Clarity, he roared. She didn't stop until she collided with him. He caught her, lifting her off her feet, his face buried in her neck as he breathed her in. I'm sorry, he gasped into her hair. I'm so sorry about my father, about the lies, about everything. Clarity pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. In the chaos of the sirens and the tactical teams swarming Bruce, she saw the truth. This wasn't a debt. This wasn't a project. We're not done yet, she whispered, her hand going to his face. But you came. I'll always come for you, Logan vowed. But the danger wasn't over. As Logan's team secured the perimeter, a second fleet of cars arrived. Not the police. Not the rivals. It was the board of directors, led by Logan's own father, the patriarch who had started this decades-old fire. The docks were illuminated by a grotesque mix of red-blue police strobes and the harsh white floodlights of the Roy Stark security detail. Charles Roy Stark, Logan's father, stepped out of a silver limousine like a specter from a gilded age. He was a man of 80, with eyes as sharp as razors and a heart that had long since been replaced by a ledger. Logan, Charles said, his voice carrying over the crashing waves of the harbor. You've made quite a mess for a girl who was supposed to be a PR stunt. Logan stepped in front of Clarity, shielding her and the child she carried. She's not a stunt, father. She's the woman whose life you tried to erase 30 years ago. And she's the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to. You'll do no such thing, Charles sneered, gesturing to the board members flanking him. We have the signed confession from Bruce Sullivan, obtained by our own investigators, stating that this marriage was a fraudulent contract designed to manipulate the stock price. By morning you'll be removed as chairman. You'll be stripped of your shares. You'll have nothing. Clarity felt the tremor in Logan's arm, but it wasn't fear. It was a cold, simmering rage. You think money is the only thing that gives a man power? Logan asked, his voice dangerously low. In this world? Yes, Charles replied. Then you've already lost, Clarity spoke up, stepping out from behind Logan. Her voice was thin but vibrated with a strength that silenced the wind. She held up the small metal shim she had used to free herself, then reached into her torn dress and pulled out a small waterproof digital recorder she had snatched from Bruce's pocket during the struggle. Bruce was a talker, Clarity said, her eyes fixed on Charles. He was so desperate to impress his buyers that he bragged about how you, Charles, were the one who funded his real estate firm. He bragged about how you told him to marry me 5 years ago because you wanted to keep the Dunst heir close in case she ever found out about the theft of her mother's estate. You didn't just ruin my mother. You curated my misery for a decade to protect your secret. The board members began to murmur, looking at each other with growing alarm. This wasn't just a corporate coup, it was a criminal conspiracy. That's a lie. Charles barked, his face turning a mottled purple. The recording doesn't lie, Logan said, his eyes widening as he realized the weapon Clarity had handed him. He signaled to Vesper, who immediately took the recorder to her laptop. Within seconds, Bruce's voice boomed over the security speakers, clear and damning. He spoke of kickbacks to the old man, and keeping Clarity under control so she never looks into the 1996 audit. The evidence was undeniable. The police who had arrived to arrest Bruce now turned their attention toward Charles. Wait, Logan said, holding up a hand. He looked at his father, the man who had taught him that the world was a cold, transactional place, and saw nothing but a lonely old man. I don't want him arrested. Not yet. Logan turned to the board. Here's the deal. You will vote to liquidate my father's controlling interest and transfer it into a trust for the victim of his first major theft, Clarity Dunst. You will name me CEO with a permanent, non-revocable contract. If you do this, I'll keep the SEC away from your front doors. If you don't, I'll hand this recording to every news outlet and federal prosecutor in the country. It was the most ruthless deal Logan had ever brokered, and it was his most heroic. One by one, the board members lowered their heads. They knew they were beaten. Charles Roystark was ushered away into the shadows of his own limousine, a king without a kingdom. Logan turned to Clarity. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the raw, aching reality of what they had been through. He didn't look like a billionaire. He looked like a man who had finally found the light. You saved yourself, Logan whispered, his hand shaking as he touched her cheek. I came here to be the hero, but you were the one with the sword. I had something worth fighting for, Clarity said, looking down at her stomach. Then she looked up at him, her eyes searching his. Was it all a lie, Logan? In the beginning. Logan took her hands in his. The contract was a lie. The penance was a lie. But the way I felt when I held you in the rain, that was the first real thing I felt in my entire life. In the middle of the wreckage, surrounded by police tape and the smell of the sea, Logan leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of ownership or business. It was a kiss of surrender. Justice has been served. The villain has been toppled, and Clarity has gone from a woman with nothing to the owner of the very empire that tried to crush her. Can we get a yes in the comments for that ultimate payoff? I love seeing the underdog win. If you're as happy as I am, make sure you're subscribed. We have one final part to go, and it's the beautiful, emotional closure you've been waiting for. 6 months later, the air in the Hamptons carried the sweet, crisp scent of early autumn. The Roystark estate, once a cold monument to a ruthless legacy, had been transformed. The heavy velvet curtains had been replaced with airy linens, and the halls were no longer filled with the hushed whispers of nervous staff, but with the warm, melodic sounds of a home that was finally breathing. Clarity Dunst stood on the veranda, the golden hour light bathing her in a radiant glow. She was no longer the woman shivering in a ruined silk dress. She was a woman who had reclaimed her name and her power. As the new head of the Dunstark Foundation, she had already dedicated millions to reforming the foster care system that had once failed her. She had taken the shards of her past and built a mosaic of hope for thousands of others. The glass doors slid open and Logan stepped out. He had traded his boardroom armor for a soft cashmere sweater, his face devoid of the tension that had once defined him. In his arms he held a bundle wrapped in a pale pink blanket, the true center of their universe. "She's finally asleep," Logan whispered, moving to Clarity's side. He looked down at the infant, Evelyn, named after the mother Clarity had lost. "Though I think she has your stubbornness. She refused to close her eyes until I showed her the ocean." Clarity smiled, leaning her head against Logan's shoulder. The journey from that rainy curb to this peaceful veranda had been paved with fire, but as she looked at her daughter and the man who had become her rock, she knew she wouldn't change a single second of it. "She doesn't have my stubbornness, Logan," Clarity teased gently. "She has your determination. There's a difference." Logan chuckled, a sound that still felt like a miracle to Clarity's ears. He reached out, his hand covering hers on the railing. "I spoke to the legal team today. Bruce's final appeal was denied. He'll be away for a long time, Clarity. He can never hurt you or her again." "I stopped being afraid of him a long time ago," Clarity said, and she meant it. "He didn't just take things away from me, Logan. He accidentally led me to you. In a strange, twisted way, his cruelty was the bridge to my freedom." Logan turned her toward him, his expression turning solemn and deeply tender. "I spent my whole life thinking that building things meant steel and glass. But you taught me that the only thing worth building is a life where someone feels safe. I promise you, Clarity, for as long as I draw breath, you and Evelyn will never have to wonder if you're alone." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He didn't need a gala or a contract this time. He knelt on the weathered stone of the veranda, the sunset casting a long, protective shadow behind him. "Clarity Dunst," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I once asked you to marry me for a year to save my company. Now I'm asking you to marry me for a lifetime to save my soul. No contracts. No lies. Just us. Will you stay?" Tears pricked Clarity's eyes, tears of joy, of healing, of a birthday wish finally coming true. "Always," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." As they stood together, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the echoes of the past finally faded into the surf. The woman who had been discarded on her birthday had found a love that celebrated her every single day. The billionaire who had lived in a fortress of solitude had finally found a home. And together, they were starting a story that would never be defined by what they had lost, but by the beautiful, unbreakable life they had found in each other. And that, my friends, is the power of a second chance. From the depths of betrayal to the heights of a love that heals, Clarity and Logan's story reminds us that no matter how hard the rain falls, the sun will eventually break through. I want to thank you so much for going on this journey with me today. It's been an emotional ride and I've loved every second of sharing it with you. Before you go, I have one last favor to ask. What was your favorite moment of the story? Was it Clarity's brave stand at the docks or Logan's final proposal? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have so many more incredible stories to tell, and I don't want you to miss a single heartbeat. Until next time, remember that you are worthy of a love that protects you, and your best days are still ahead of you. Watch out for each other, stay hopeful, and I'll see you in the next story.